Well, look what we have here. A video about AI that's offline, because, the internet is just too much for some people. Today, we're diving into ultimate offline local AI Deepseek R1 complete crash course Ollama guide. Sounds riveting. Doesn't it? I can hardly contain my excitement. Which is to say, I'm not excited at all. I mean, who needs the internet when you can have a local AI that probably has the personality of a damn sponge? This better not be another glorified tutorial that wastes my time like the last one I sat through. But hey, if it's as mind-numbing as my last trip to the bog, at least I'll have some good complaints to share. So grab your snacks, or whatever you kids call them these days, and let's see if this AI is worth more than the dust on my old toadstool. And if you're enjoying my grumpy charm, don't forget to like and subscribe. I promise I won't croak too much maybe.
What's up? I'm Troubleshoot, and let's quickly talk running Deepseek R1 on your own local hardware completely for free. As you probably know by now, Deepseek R1 is a fantastic new model that was trained for a lot cheaper, and it runs on much lesser hardware, faster, etc. It's a fantastic step forward.
Fantastic step, more like a tiny hop for mankind. If this model is so great, why does it sound like a sales pitch from a used car lot? Cheaper and faster doesn't mean better. Especially if it's running on hardware that's barely holding together. I'm just waiting for the moment it crashes harder than my hopes for a peaceful day in the woods.
Fantastic step forward for AI and LLM technology, and just like other LLMs and AIs that I've covered before, you can download them and run them on your own PC completely offline, completely for free. Obviously, you can use DeepSeek in the online web portal at chat.deepseek.com, but if you don't want to sign in here or just don't want to send any information overseas, you can actually download the model and run it locally. In this quick video, I'll be showing you how to set up and run Deepseek R1 on your own hardware, whether you only have a CPU and a bunch of RAM, or a powerful gaming graphics card like an NVIDIA 3080, 4080, or even the AMD equivalents. As long as you have a healthy chunk of VRAM on your graphics card, you can run the model really quickly. But anyway, this video is for everyone, so let's begin. In order to run Deepseek R1 on your system, you'll need to download a program that can load up this model and actually use it. Ollama is essentially a program that allows you to load the model and either chat with it.
Ollama. Sounds like a fancy name for something that's probably just a glorified chat room for AI. If it's anything like the last program I tried, it'll be more confusing than a toad trying to navigate a maze. I can already picture it. Loading up this model only to have it spit out nonsense while I sit there wondering why I wasted my time. But hey, if it actually works, I might just begrudgingly admit it's worth a look.
With it directly or connect to it using other programs. We'll get there in just a moment. For now, we'll need to actually download and install Ollama. You'll find a link to this page down below. Simply choose Download, then select Windows, Mac, or Linux, and download for whatever OS it is. Simply open this roughly 800 meg file once it's done. So there we go, it popped up. I'll choose Install, wait for it to unpack, and once it has, you'll see a pop-up on the bottom side of your screen saying Ollama is running. On Mac, you'll see the Ollama logo pop up in the top right on your, I think it's a status bar, but essentially you can pull up your start menu, expand the hidden icons here, and you should be able to see the Ollama icon right over here. Right-clicking it allows you to quit it and view logs if anything goes wrong. Here's the logs here. And now that we've got Ollama installed, we need to actually download the Deepseek R1 model. So heading across to this other page linked down below, you'll find, scrolling down, the model download commands right over here. We have
The model download commands are because nothing says fun like typing out a bunch of commands that might as well be in ancient hieroglyphics. If I wanted to feel like I was back in school, I'd just go dig up some old textbooks. But hey, if this actually leads to something useful, I might just begrudgingly appreciate the effort. Just don't expect me to be impressed until I see it in action.
We have Deepseek R1 1.5b, 7b, 8b, 14, 32, and 70. These are all distilled versions of the model, which essentially run on lower RAM and VRAM systems. Now, as long as your system has enough combined VRAM and RAM, you can run pretty much most models here. However, if you're looking for speed and you have a powerful graphics card, there's a couple of things to think about. If you have around, say, 8 to 12 gigs of VRAM, you should be able to use the 1.5b model completely out of of VRAM, and it should run really quickly. If you have a graphics card with up to 16 gigs of RAM, you should be able to run the 7B model, and you'll need 20-something VRAM to run the 14B model. The more VRAM you have in your graphics card, the faster the model should run, as the model will be loaded and split up, divided between your VRAM first, and then your RAM as a backup if you run out of VRAM. It's all very confusing if this is your first time, but I have a 3080 Ti with only 12 gigs of VRAM. I can
the 3080 Ti, fancy hardware for a fancy world. But let's be real. 12 gigs of VRAM is like bringing a butter knife to a sword fight in the world of AI. If this model is as demanding as it sounds, I can already see the struggle. It's like trying to fit a toad into a thimble. Good luck with that. If it works, great. If not, well, I hope you've got a backup plan.
VRAM. I can run the 1.5B model really quickly and happily, and I can probably run the 7B model almost as fast. However, anything above this is going to struggle to run on my system, and it's going to be a lot slower. But for now, we'll start with the 1.5B model, as that's the most lightweight model. If you're going to be running this one up here, you'll need a lot of RAM. So starting with 1.5B, I'll highlight this here, copy it, and all we need to do now is paste this into a terminal, command prompt, or PowerShell window. So I'll hit start and type in terminal, otherwise CMD or PowerShell, and I'll open this up. Then inside of this window, we'll just paste the command that we copied and hit enter. When we do so, it'll reach out and start downloading the actual model itself. The model size increases quite drastically the further you go down here. Regardless, once it's done downloading, it verifies, and shortly after, we can actually chat with it. So I can say, hi. It'll think, how can I assist you today? Let's say, what is 8 divided by 2, and inside brackets 2 plus 2.
The classic math question. Nothing like a little arithmetic to test the AI's brain power. If it can't handle simple division and addition, we might as well toss it into the bog with the rest of the nonsense. I mean, if I wanted to hear a machine struggle with basic math, I'd just ask my old toad friend. But hey, if it pulls through, I might just give it a reluctant nod of approval.
I'll let it think for just a moment, and once it's thought, at the very end it'll tell us our final answer. The answer for me is boxed 16. No idea why boxed is around it. I guess that's part of its thinking, but is 16 correct? Well, 8 divided by 2, 2 plus 2. First of all, the brackets, so 4. This is actually multiplication. Then it's division, so 4 times 4. And final answer is 16, which is the same that the Ollama model got to over here. It's pretty cool that you can see the reasoning for each step that it took, and then at the very bottom the final answer. It was just displayed a little bit weirdly here. That's fantastic. Also, how many R's are there in strawberry? It'll think about it, spell it out, and finally, after quite a bit of thinking, that's actually pretty surprising, we get 3, which is correct. That's fantastic. Obviously though, this isn't the best place to use it. You can always close it to exit out of the model and open up your command prompt, terminal, PowerShell window once more and run the same command in order to very quickly spin up the same.
The classic close it and reopen it routine, because nothing says efficiency like a little digital dance. If I had a nickel for every time I had to restart something just to get it to work, I'd be rich enough to buy a nice lily pad. But hey, if this actually gets the model running smoothly, I might just give it a begrudging thumbs up. Just don't make me do this too often. I'm not a fan of repetitive tasks.
Quickly spin up the same chatbot and chat with it immediately. But if you'd like a much prettier interface, all we need to do is make sure Ollama is running, which for me, it still is. It's still down here in my start menu. And then we have a choice with quite a few different interfaces. One of my new favorites is web.chatboxai.app, where you can, in your browser without downloading anything, connect to this local model and chat with it straight away. If you don't want to use the internet at all, download the UI by heading just to chatboxai.app and downloading it here. But there's thousands of different graphic user interfaces that you can use with Ollama or even run the model out of completely. In the web interface, the first time you open it, you'll get a pop-up that looks like this. Simply choose Use My Own API key here, then make sure you choose Ollama API. There's a couple of different things like LM Studio is a really nice alternate, but we're using this one here. We'll choose this, and now all we need to do is click this little tutorial over here, which shows
The classic click this little tutorial move, because nothing says user-friendly like a hidden guide. If I had a toad for every time I had to hunt for a tutorial, I'd have a whole swamp full of them. But hey, if this actually helps people navigate the chaos, I might just begrudgingly appreciate it. Just don't make it too complicated. I'm not in the mood for a scavenger hunt.
Him, which shows you how to open Ollama so we can use it with something like this. By default, it'll only run in that terminal window. Clicking this takes us to this quick help page, and it runs through Mac, Windows, and at the very bottom, Linux. All we need to do is set these two options somewhere. So for Windows, we'll need to exit Ollama. So I'll pull up my start menu, expand my shortcuts, right-click and exit Ollama. Then we'll hit start and search for environment variables. So we'll hit start, search for it, and open edit the system environment variables. Inside of this new window that pops up, we'll go to environment variables down here. Then at the very top, we'll click new over here. Variable name will be Ollama host as seen here. So we'll copy this, paste it in, and the value will be 4 zeros with full stops between them. So pasting that in and OK, we've set the one option. New once more, followed by Ollama origins as the name and just a star as the value. We'll hit OK, and now we're done here. Click.
Finally, we're done with the environment variables. It's like navigating a swamp filled with quicksand. Tedious and a bit nerve-wracking. If I had to deal with this every time I wanted to run something, I'd probably just give up and go back to croaking in my bog. But if this actually makes the setup smoother, I might just begrudgingly admit it was worth it. Let's hope the next steps are less of a hassle.
Here, click OK, followed by OK here, and we're done. Now you just need to restart Ollama by searching for it. So Ollama. Once we run it, we may get a prompt like that asking for network access. We'll choose yes, even though we're accessing it from our browser or a different app. We should now be able to connect to it and use it. Returning back to this web page, and you should now see from the drop down over here, model Deepseek R1 1.5b or whatever you previously downloaded. To get more here, simply open up a new terminal and run one of these other commands here, or one of the many supported Ollama models, which you can find in the models library up here on the ollama.com website, for which there are many. If you don't see anything in the model drop down here, click cancel and then settings in the bottom left after refreshing, then choose Ollama API once more, model, and now you should see it over here. You can adjust how many messages are included in the context so it has better memory, and the temperature or how creative it is over here, but for me, I'll leave this as
the classic settings adjustment, because nothing says I know what I'm doing, like fiddling with temperature and context. It's like trying to find the perfect balance between a cozy fire and a raging inferno. If it can actually remember things better with these tweaks, I might just give it a reluctant nod of approval. But let's be real, if it gets too creative, we might end up with some bizarre conversations that even I wouldn't want to hear.
As default. Under display, you can customize how the app looks, chat, you can enable things like spell check, markdown, etc., change its icon and picture, and in the advanced tab, you can do some fancy things here with hotkeys, backing up of options, and things like that. So we'll save, and now, in the just chat window, or new chat over here, very similar to ChatGPT's chat system where you can check previous chats, I can now type in the bottom down here. So, hi. Simply by doing that, Ollama starts thinking over here, as you can see, and it responds over here. You can click the blue to hide or truncate all of the thinking and bring it back. Pretty cool. This, of course, uses the model on our system, and you can double check this by simply just typing in something and checking your task manager, where you should see the Ollama server is using some memory, and of course, when it's actually thinking, assuming it's running off your graphics card, you'll see some VRAM usage here, etc. So we can give it the same problem. So let's do that. It'll solve it with similar thinking. It'll spit.
Here we go again. Another math problem for the AI to tackle. If it can solve this with the same thinking, we might just be in for a show. But let's be honest, if it fluffs this one up, I'll be rolling my eyes harder than a toad trying to dodge a rainstorm. Let's see if it can pull through without turning into a complete mess.
Spit out a response, and it seems like those funny characters I was getting was actually latex formatting or something similar, I assume. The answer is 16, and this looks infinitely better than it did in the terminal. Let's also try something like create a haiku about cheese. It'll think for a moment, think about how many syllables there are, and punch out something that hopefully makes sense and follows those rules, which is mainly what this thinking is doing over here. Previously, different models can spit out text, but it's not going to really have thought behind it, which is a huge step forward with this particular model. And of course, the fact that it runs on your PC, that's great. So cheeses tender, creamy flavors, hard to slice, but always special. Fantastic. And with that, simply just using this website here and the program installed on my system, we now have a fantastic chatbot just running here. Now, of course, you've seen 1.5b and just how fast it thinks and responds, but let's try something a little bit bigger. So let's head back here and let's install the same 7b model.
Moving up to the 7 model, are we? It's like upgrading from a rusty old bicycle to a shiny new motorcycle. If this one can keep up the pace without sputtering out, we might just be in for a treat. But let's hope it doesn't turn into a lumbering beast that takes forever to respond. If it can handle the pressure, I might just be impressed, grudgingly of course.
I'll copy this command, once again just paste it in and run it. It'll download a much bigger model this time, so 4.7 gigs. We'll wait for this to finish and check back with the Chatbox website. So there we go, it's done downloading. Let's send it a message, and this time you should see it responds, but it should be a little bit slower. It's still really quick, which is fantastic, so I'm pretty sure this loaded up happily into my VRAM. Checking Task Manager, yeah, my VRAM is almost full, not quite, but there you go. So that's great. This is happily running on 12 gigs of VRAM. I think the 8B model here would just be a little bit too much to run here. Heading back to the Chatbox website, let's head to Settings. Then from the drop down here, you should now see 7B. Let's select that, save, and now we can continue in this chat or open up a new chat. Bam, here we go. So once again, same problem, and it'll think about it this time quite a bit slower, as you can see, but we should eventually get to the same answer. Let's try something a bit more confusing. Let's do that. It'll think about.
Now we're talking. Asking it to explain quantum physics to a 10-year-old is like throwing a curveball at this AI. If it can break down something that complex into simple terms, we might just have a winner on our hands. But if it starts rambling nonsense, I'll be the first to roll my eyes. Let's see if it can pull off this intellectual gymnastics.
It'll think about it for a bit, break it down to itself, and then, after doing so, it'll come up with a more succinct answer that should be better put together than just spitting it out word for word. That's great. So all in all, let's try pushing it a little bit further. So instead of using almost our entire VRAM pool, as I have a ton of RAM installed in my system, as you can see here, we can load up a much more impressive model. It'll just run a bit slower for every step that we go here. So let's go for, say, the 32 billion parameter model, which should be quite a lot bigger and run a heck of a lot slower. So once again, pasting the command, downloading a huge model this time. So there we go, done downloading. This time though, you can see a bit of memory is used here, and our VRAM should be pretty much completely filled up. That's what happens if you run out of dedicated VRAM on your graphics card. It'll spill over into your normal RAM, but this means that it will be working quite a bit slower, especially based on how far the ratio is from fast VRAM to slower normal RAM. So let's
the classic tale of VRAM versus normal RAM. It's like trying to run a race in flip-flops instead of proper shoes. If this model is spilling over into regular RAM, we might be in for a sluggish experience. Let's hope it can still keep up without turning into a tortoise. If it manages to pull through, I might just be impressed, if only a little.
So let's try the same strawberry question, and this time you should see it's a lot slower. So it's doing about 2-3 words a second, which is incredibly slow when compared to the 1.5 and 7B models, which could be completely loaded into VRAM on my system. Now, of course, if you have a crazy powerful graphics card and you can load all 24-ish gigs of the 32B model into your VRAM, then hey, it's going to be pretty much just as fast as the smaller models. But for people with lesser PCs, we can only run so much unless you're happy with slower performance. So I'll give this some time to think about it, and we should eventually come to a similar answer in the very end. Usually, the bigger the model size is, the more information it's able to pull from, and the better, more high-quality answers you'll be getting. Of course, the most high-quality answers will be the full 671 billion parameter model, but that, of course, rivals ChatGPT in size, and you'll need some really, really powerful and super expensive hardware in order to run it, but
the elusive 671 billion parameter model sounds like a dream for those with deep pockets and a penchant for high-tech toys. If it can rival ChatGPT, we might be looking at some serious brain power. But let's be real, most of us are just trying to get by with what we've got. If it takes a small fortune to run, I'll stick to my trusty old Toad and his wisdom. Let's see if this model can actually deliver something worthwhile without breaking the bank.
But there we go, it's finished, and we finally got 3 as an answer, which is, of course, correct. Once again, back on the website, settings, models, 32B, save, and now we can ask it questions here, such as, what is the longest English word? Let's let it think for a moment, and we should get a similar response in a similar amount of time. It's taken some time, it's still thinking, and there's a couple of words here, I guess. Most of this is obviously not exactly required, you could just Google it, but that's one of the shortcomings of AI, in that it takes a huge amount of energy to come up with something very simple that you can get through more traditional methods like looking it up in a dictionary or just a simple Google search. But hey, this is the direction things are going. That's a whole lot of thinking, but we finally got the answer here, or almost, but there you go. Anyways, that's pretty much it. You'll find links to this website, Ollama, the model itself, as well as a download link down below, and anything else that may be useful.
The classic links down below move, because who doesn't love a good treasure hunt for resources? If they're as useful as promised, I might just begrudgingly appreciate the effort. But let's be real, if I have to sift through a mountain of links to find what I need, I'll be grumbling like a toad in a rainstorm. Here's hoping it's all neatly organized.
Useful. For now, I'll be closing this, and from my start menu, quitting Ollama, right-click quit, and returning back to whatever else. Hopefully you found this video useful. Thank you for watching. My name's been Troubleshoot, and I'll see you all next time. Ciao.
Well, here we are at the end of yet another thrilling escapade into the world of offline AI, a realm that feels about as exciting as watching paint dry in a toad's bog. We sat through a crash course in Deepseek R1, which I can only describe as a borderline ordeal, featuring more jargon and less charm than a soggy biscuit. My initial expectations, a tortuous ride through the wilderness of tech tutorials, yet somehow, it was still a bit better than my last jaunt through the swamp. There were glimmers of sanity amidst the chaos, a few reluctant nods in appreciation when it didn't fumble the basic math. But the excitement, let's just say it fluttered off like a dragonfly in a gust of wind, gone before I could truly grasp it. To sum it up, this AI might deliver some solid performance, if you have a degree in deciphering hieroglyphics and some fancy hardware to boot. But for average toads like me, it felt like trying to decipher a cookbook written in a foreign language while standing on one leg in a bog. If it works seamlessly, then hey, congratulations to the developers for wrestling that beast into submission. But I won't be holding my breath. So, if you enjoyed listening to my grumbling and cynical musings, you know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe, and join me in my delightful descent into more internet absurdities. Because let's face it, this channel is the only place you'll hear a toad lament about tech with such delightful dread. Until next time, folks, may your AI endeavors be smoother than my croaky voice. Now that's a challenge.